Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Crazy K, and this is the third video in a series discussing giant kind and the role they play in my homebrew world Therenor, an ancient and primordial realm where giants roam. In this video, I wanted to take a look at the Frost Giants, those Viking-inspired Arctic warriors from the Forgotten Realms, and discuss how we decided to adjust them and better acclimate them to Therenor's frozen tundras. My goal by the end of this video is to create a frost giant that feels familiar, but with a fresh coat of paint and some extra quirks which bring depth to the race and help them feel like they belong in this Arctic landscape. Stick around until the end of the video to hear a narrative piece recounting one party's gruesome encounter within a frost giant's icy lair. Just a reminder, if you like giant-themed world-building content, consider giving the channel a like and a subscribe, and take a look at our previous two videos, where we reimagined both stone and hill giants to better suit this world. Any and all speed paints showcased in this video are done by my girlfriend Lee, and you can follow her on both Instagram and YouTube. And with that, I think we should start by taking a look at the Forgotten Realms and seeing how they handle their frost giants. In the Forgotten Realms, frost giants inhabit the coldest regions of Faerun. Generally considered crude and unintelligent among the other races, frost giants are exceptional warriors, frequently hunting great and dangerous beasts throughout their Arctic realm. Clad in furs, chainmail, and horned helmets, these giants are quite possibly the closest thing Dungeons & Dragons has to the tried-and-true Viking. Standing on average just over 21 feet tall, frost giants are broad-shouldered and muscular, their skin and hair varying shades of blue and white. In addition to furs and chainmail, frost giants would often adorn themselves in jewelry, and males would typically grow massive beards, which iced over and became matted with icicles. Impervious to the cold, they are perfectly adapted to thrive in Faerun's frozen wastes, congregating in large family units within frigid, mountainous, and Arctic environments. In a frost giant society, status in the ordning is determined by raw strength, which is usually gauged by two metrics: one's ability to wrestle and one's ability to boast. By challenging and conquering the hostile beasts of their homelands, frost giants build muscle, collect trophies, and develop scarring, which they then use to show other clan members physical proof of their might. The competitive nature in which they climb to the top of the ordning often leads to greater challenges against even more hazardous foes, and as such, frost giants rarely reach their average lifespan of 250 years. In a frost giant clan, their social structure was determined by how physically fit and capable they were. Most frost giants were warriors or hunters, and their society was led by a powerful and intelligent individual known as a Jarl. The Jarl would take a look at the frost giants within their family and assign tasks based on their physical strength and endurance. While leatherworking was a valuable skill for frost giants, most considered this sort of thing beneath them, and as such, usually the weakest of the frost giants were assigned to these sorts of menial labors. While physical strength was everything to a frost giant, family was a close second. Some frost giants would dedicate their lives to writing elaborate sagas about the adventures of their tribe leaders, and these stories were passed down throughout the generations, both as a tribute to Anam Allfather and to preserve the clan's history through oral tradition. These storytellers, known as skalds, were an integral part of frost giant society, and as such were treated with the same respect as warriors. A frost giant can be exceptionally cruel and have been known to enslave other sentient races on occasion. However, they were also never above the idea of trading for material that they might not have access to in the frigid north. I found myself enjoying frost giants more as I continued to read about them. They're very clearly written to fulfill that Nordic, northern barbarian archetype, which is, admittedly, a fantasy staple. Even though the official 5e art for these giants toned down the Viking flavor a bit compared to previous editions, you can still see some of that inspiration in there, and it pops up even more prominently in other pieces of 5th edition art. I mean, it's a classic for a reason. Vikings are cool, but the Nordic berserker has been done time and time and time again. So for our frost giants, I definitely wanted some aspects of that, but I want to go a little more in-depth and add to their culture besides just fighting each other for superiority. So this is something that we should definitely keep in mind so we can make sure Therenor's frost giants aren't just big blue Vikings. So before we discuss the actual redesign of the giants, it's important to learn more about the realm that they're going to be inhabiting. In Therenor, the frigid plains to the north are equal parts brutal and unforgiving. Locked in a perpetual winter, the sub-zero climate makes survival among the snow nigh impossible. Because of this, the vast majority of life in Therenor resides south of the world's mountains. This doesn't mean Therenor's north is desolate, it's far from it. Even in the remotest parts of the realm, primordial life thrives. Arctic beasts covered in thick, insulated hides scavenge the tundra for cold-resistant shrubbage, while vicious predators stalk the ice for their next kill. Rarely, and hidden just out of sight within the snow, nomadic communities of small folk follow closely behind, tracking wildlife and foraging as they travel. Many years ago, in a time before the snow, old world civilizations were abundant, but are now trapped beneath the ice and largely lost to time. Lost to all, of course, except for the frost giants. In Therenor, frost giants are towering, pinniped-like humanoids that roam the tundras of the north. Though they appear as simple beasts, these giants possess curious and complex minds which yearn for knowledge, absorbing and processing information far faster than any of Therenor's other sentient species. To satiate their desire to learn, frost giants spend the majority of their lives amassing collections of ancient tomes, relics, and other intriguing or magical curios from bygone civilizations. The artifacts are stored within their lair, where they may intensely study them and unlock their secrets in peace. Extremely knowledgeable in history, magic, and the ways of the old world, frost giants are steadfast in their pursuit of understanding. A frost giant will have master's-level intellect in a wide array of subjects, and may speak upwards of a dozen languages, some in dialects which have long since died out. Frost giants will establish miles-wide hunting grounds around their lairs, where they will routinely trek into the snow in search of more artifacts. A frost giant will spend multiple days hunting, their rotund, blubbery bodies perfectly suited for maintaining heat in sub-zero temperatures, and their thick, flippered forearms useful for shoveling ice and permafrost. Adept swimmers, they can hold their breath for a little over 3 hours, during which they feed on a strict pescatarian diet of fish, squid, and crustaceans. Like all giants in Therenor, frost giants share a deep connection with the realm's frozen wastes and their life-preserving qualities. The heart of a frost giant contains a small portion of the realm's frigid primordial power, granting them the ability to sense similar magic which is rare in the tundra. As such, the one thing a frost giant covets more than old world artifacts are artifacts with magical properties. Though they are courteous and polite when spoken to, frost giants have little control over their base instincts, rendering them fiercely territorial towards any creature they feel threatens their collection or their pursuit of knowledge. This is especially the case for other frost giants who battle one another on sight. When two giants encounter each other in the field, they will inevitably engage in a violent duel which can last days at a time, biting, slashing, and goring at their opponent with tusks and claws. There are no breaks, the skirmish ending only when one giant is on the brink of death and yields. The loser of the duel will forfeit a magical artifact in their possession, or provide information on where the winner may find a new item for their collection. The two giants will then go their separate ways. Rarely, male and female frost giants will engage in duels and lose on purpose, willingly parting with a relic from their hoard. The winner will intensely study their prize before seeking out the loser and returning it some days later. The next time these two giants meet, the previous winner may surrender early, giving up a relic of their own. This courting ritual may continue on for many months, with some pursuers offering dozens of relics before feelings are reciprocated. If their efforts are not in vain, the end result of this bizarre ritual is a single calf, one which the mother will raise on her own for a period of 10 to 15 years. Occasionally, a frost giant may perish as the result of a duel. Over the course of about a week, the giant's corpse will bloat and swell as their magic-infused heart freezes over and destabilizes. Once reaching critical sub-zero temperatures, the giant will detonate, its heart splintering and body scattering across the snow in an explosion of frost and viscera. A few days later, new life rises from the snow, taking on the form of stout humanoids comprised of glacial ice. Formed from the shattered shards of a frost giant's heart, the Iceborn are beings of pure frost who seldom trek beyond the snow-capped summits and icy wastes of the realm. Durable and machine-like in behavior, they share fragments of the knowledge once coveted by their frost giant, which they use to return back to the giant's lair shortly after their creation. Iceborn rarely leave the giant's hunting grounds, devotedly defending the artifacts there and preserving its legacy. Sharing the tundra with many hostile beasts, the Iceborn are no strangers to death. If at any point an Iceborn's physical form is severely damaged, their frozen exteriors are shed in a blast of icy shrapnel, deterring attackers and leaving behind their frost giant's splintered heart piece. The Iceborn can then regenerate their exteriors, as long as this core shard remains at below freezing temperatures for a few days. The Iceborn treat the time between each death as chapters of their life, the wisest among them having shed their icy bodies dozens of times over countless years. With each new form, the ties an Iceborn has to their giant's home weaken, to a point where they leave their communities, traveling beyond the snow to lands unknown in search of a new purpose. In recent years, word of immortal, untiring workers of ice and snow has spread to the nobility of Therenor, leading to an exponential increase in frost giant hunting parties, hired to bring back frost giant hearts. Rarely are these expeditions successful, often ending in a violent and bloody death, but the reward, to some, is well worth the risk. If the impressive feat of slaying a frost giant is achieved, much care is taken into ensuring the heart is transported safely to its buyer. The heart, icy cold to the touch, is stored in an iron container seated over white coals to prevent it from freezing and preemptively shattering. Once out of the tundra and in the hands of its new owner, the frost giant's heart can then be safely broken apart, and the Iceborn put to work. Frost giants are not poached only for their hearts. Their tusks are also a prized trophy for any hunter, and a favorite among nobility to adorn throne rooms and dining halls, as they represent wealth, knowledge, and power. Even some mages are willing to pay handsomely for the ivory, so it may be carved into potent wands of Sleet Storm, Ice Storm, and Cone of Cold. And this is what we have for frost giants. I really think this differentiates enough from that standard Viking that the frost giants in the Forgotten Realms are, but still keeps some of those core beliefs and those core design choices. So while our frost giants are not family-oriented like the Forgotten Realms ones are, they both do place a deep emphasis on the importance of history. The Forgotten Realms giants and their skalds spreading oral tradition, and our frost giants wanting to preserve old world relics. Speaking of relics, we did take a look at Celtic relics and Viking Age artifacts to influence patterns and colors for these giants, which of course they're going to adorn themselves in them because they are such fanatics when it comes to history. I think it's very neat that the stuff that these frost giants wear are not their specific culture. They just have such a deep appreciation for it, and they would absolutely hate seeing these artifacts lost to time. One of the very first things we decided on when it came to the frost giants was the tusk shape. We wanted to reference the original silhouettes of the frost giants with their horned helmets, and over time this ended up becoming an inspiration for how our frost giants acted. They're territorial but very intelligent beings. The first version of our frost giants is very similar to the finalized design, just with a lot more polish. We took a look at a lot of different animals to try and figure out the physical appearance of this frost giant. Walruses, apes, hippos, elephants, seals, mammoths, even humans. We kind of blended all of these together to get what we have now. Their body type was designed to make them look like they were suited to the Arctic environment instead of just the muscular build that the Forgotten Realms giants have. And we designed this with the intention of making their intelligence seem like a surprise when you first encounter one. How on the outside they're brutish and animalistic, but when you actually speak to one, they're incredibly well-versed and scholarly. We took a look at that sumo strongman build to emphasize that they're both fat and muscle. I personally imagine them fighting like elephant seals or like sumos, where at first they posture and circle one another before charging, slamming their body weight into each other, gouging each other with their tusks, biting, clawing, really going wild and giving into that base instinct that they have such a difficulty controlling. Despite them being so beast-like in nature, we wanted to show off this higher level of humanity. So braided beards showcasing that they have the capacity to groom themselves and keep up with their appearance. We made sure their eyes were still front-facing so they wouldn't look too animalistic or look like just a walrus head on a person's body. We also went back and forth on it for a while, but we ended up settling that, yeah, female frost giants would also still have facial hair and beards, which are groomed and braided. To these giants, this is something that matters. They are intelligent enough to recognize that self-care is important. The frost giant calf is clearly referencing seal pups. They're adorable. I really like the white coat that those baby seals have. And eventually they would shed it and develop that thick, blubbery, leathery skin that you see on the adult frost giant. While we really didn't need to design a baby, I really thought adding it would give an extra layer of depth to how frost giants interact with one another. Finally, with the Iceborn, we really wanted to showcase how, for our frost giants, knowledge isn't just stored in the brain, but in the heart. Iceborn are just a fraction of the whole that was once the frost giants' whole purpose. Our giants lived to learn, and after a while, each Iceborn will come to figure this out for themselves too, and travel beyond the tundra in pursuit of something greater. If you've made it all the way here, thank you so much for enjoying the content that Lee and I have been producing. We've been having so much fun making videos like this, and every single time we finish one, we immediately get started working on the next. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like and a subscribe so you can be alerted when we post more about the world of Therenor. And stick around to hear a narrative piece where we continue to follow our lone adventurer as he accompanies a group of veteran giant hunters deep into the icy wastes of Therenor's mountains. Thank you sincerely for watching, and I hope to see you soon. There were 8 of us in total. Most of the company, young in body but heavily aged by stress, spent their mornings resting wearily as our caravans made their slow ascent upwards to Therenor's icier regions. It has been 2 weeks since I joined these fellows on their excursion, and while I am still unsure of their destination, I have been promised the experience will be valuable to my studies. The fee was heavy, so I hoped for this to be true. As we traveled, the tired mornings turned to dusk, and soon the crisp night air filled with the sound of laughter and revelry. Through mouths of food and gulps of ale, my hosts shared with me tales of previous expeditions, the countless spoils they've gained, and the friends they've lost along the way. Not before long, we found ourselves through the mountains and in the tundra. Flat, rocky stretches of land cut by shallow rivers of freezing glacier water. On the horizon loomed massive, twisting pillars of ice and snow. There was little variation in plant life here. Their deep red hues stood out against the freshly laid snow. The soil is frozen nearly year-round, leading to only the toughest of shrubs, grasses, and mosses thriving. Shortly after we arrived, our nightly revelry stopped. The air, bone-dry and piercing, felt like fire on the lungs, and was far too frigid to bear for more than a moment's time. Most days were silent, focused solely on conserving heat and following the command of a sharp-faced halfling, the chief navigator of our expedition. I was assured our time here would be relatively short, but 3 weeks into our excursion has left me with nothing but doubt. That night, we found a small shelf of ice which shielded us from the Arctic wind. Bundled in layers upon layers of bed furs, I went to sleep longing for the comforts of home. Just before sunrise, we were awoken by a thunderous shaking, the rumbling of ice and snow rapidly approaching our camping grounds. Before we could react, 2 massive bodies burst from beyond the ice shelf, bloodied and locked in an embrace. In the center of camp now stood 2 bull frost giants, their bodies pressed into one another. The giant on the left, its blubbery hide a mauvish color, was adorned in all manner of relics. It wore a necklace of assorted ivory trinkets and protected its squishier underside with a patinaed bronze girdle. Its beard was well groomed, braided tightly and affixed with an iron relic from ages past. The other giant, its hide indigo in hue, was less decorated, but with a thicker beard and longer, messier head hair. This one sported a leather collar inset with large, fossilized shark teeth. The two giants barked and grunted at one another as they wrestled, hell-bent on subduing the other. The company, completely caught by surprise, scrambled to escape their path. Each giant shoved against the other with immense force, shifting earth and upheaving boulders and ice, oblivious to the world around them. I watched as one company member caught in their destructive path was trampled in an instant, his tent, caravan, and person flattened as the giants battled over him. I ran away from the camp into the freezing cold and harsh winds to escape their wrath, turning around in time to watch the decorated giant gore the indigo one with its tusks, toppling it backwards and into the ice shelf. The sheer weight of the giant crashing to the ground caused fragments of ice from the shelf to splinter off, raining down on what remained of the camp. Another caravan, carrying two company members and attempting to flee, was caught in the path of falling glacial debris and smashed. The indigo giant, prone and bleeding, emitted a piercing whistle, signaling its surrender. Removing its collar, the relic was offered to the victor, who accepted and stored it in a side satchel. Both giants collected themselves, exchanging glances with one another, before departing from the battleground. We too had to collect what was left of ourselves. The sharp-faced halfling, boiling with rage, instructed the five of us to gather our dead and follow after the mauve giant. A few hours later, we were in pursuit. A stipulation for joining the company was forfeiting the right to question. If asked to do something, it must be done. I protested, however, when the day came where I was commanded to leave my scrolls and trinkets so we can continue on foot. I was told this was to ensure the safety of all members, especially in the dangerous, high-stress situations we were about to find ourselves in. But having no access to any of my tools left a deep pit in my stomach. Eventually I would yield, leaving my gear behind save for a short bow, a sword, my field journal, and a ring of invisibility buried deep in my back pocket. An hour of trekking through icy plains led us to the mouth of a massive glacial cavern, the entrance littered with the shells and bones of sizable marine life. From within, we could hear the guttural mutterings of a truly massive beast, undoubtedly the giant from earlier. Silently, what was left of the company entered the cave. The interior of the cavern was adorned in seemingly hundreds of wood, metal, and ivory trinkets, each one carved and stamped with the runes and graphemes of unknown civilizations. They were packed in corners, hung from the walls, and dangled from the ceiling, spinning and reflecting rays of early morning light which danced throughout the cavern. Scraped out of the wall were 4 long, shallow divots 5 to 25 feet above the cave floor, where dozens of aged tomes and scrolls are stored. Next to this archaic bookshelf lay a much more impressive piece of furniture. A whale skull, approximately 14 feet in length, balanced upon 2 logs of petrified wood and secured in place with ropes of cordage made from dried kelp. It is here the frost giant stood, easily 23 feet in height, its sleek, blubbery skin still freshly wounded from its earlier brawl. The giant was rotating its most recent prize in its flippered hands, hastily alternating between manipulating the object and inscribing runes on a large, dried pelt, using squid ink and a baleen bristled brush. The giant's back was facing us, and while I could not read the runes, it appears to be documenting the object in its native Jotun tongue. I eagerly archived everything I could see in my journal, in awe at the wellspring of humanity this creature's displayed compared to mere days ago. In the strangest way, it felt as if I was observing a colleague more so than a beast, and it was this revelation which ripped me from my observational trance. I reassessed my surroundings, as the company crept closer to the giant, positioning themselves throughout the cavern with their weapons drawn. Only then did the reality of our situation dawn upon me. We came here to slay him. The realization struck me like a mace to the chest. How could I have been so naive? My vision clouded by silvery words and the promise of excitement and knowledge, it made me overlook my gut instincts. Killing something so unique, so cultured and wizened is a disservice to research and the antithesis of my being. By now, my choice was clear. I wanted no part in this. Disgusted, I revealed my ring of invisibility and prepared my escape. The giant perked up, its beady eyes wide and alert. Dropping the brush and the hide, it whipped its head around, eyes darting between the five of us. The giant postured itself upright, its immense size on full display, and bellowed a deafening bark. I quickly covered the ring once more as the realization set in. The beast can sense magic. One hunter looked back in my direction, her face a mix of rage and fear. She only had moments to shout before being interrupted by a wide-arced swat from the giant's flipper. The hunter flew through the air, clipping a few dangling ceiling relics before crashing into the opposite cave wall. The giant followed with thunderous footsteps, dropping its full weight into her as it slammed into the side of the cavern. The walls shook with tremendous force as journals and notebooks toppled from their shelves. I stuck to the walls of the cave, hoping to depart in the ensuing chaos. The remaining 3 members of the company began to fire arrows and spears into its back flesh, piercing through its fatty hide. The giant sputtered as it climbed to its feet, its shoulder and arm now coated in fresh blood. Now in a frenzy, the monster began to violently pursue the nearest hunter, barreling through everything in its way. If I am too hasty, I could easily be flattened, either by the giant or wayward debris. I needed to be patient and wait for the perfect moment to run. Quietly, I hid beneath a pile of discarded tomes and fabrics, ready to leave at my earliest convenience. The frost giant shouted a command in a familiar yet foreign tongue, with the guttural grunting one might find in Orcish dialects. After a second hail of arrows struck the creature, the giant grabbed another hunter from the company in its flippered hand, raising him high in the air. In one swift motion, the giant swung its arm down and craned its neck upwards, skewering the man through the chin and ripping his head clean from his body. Having received no response the first time, the giant dropped the corpse and spoke again, this time with a gentle, melodious intonation. The halfling quickly took notice, shouting back in his native tongue before notching another arrow and firing it into the giant's neck. Enraged, it bolted with surprising speed towards him, flattening another hunter underfoot. It snatched the halfling by the leg, swinging him high into the air before throwing him onto the desk. The giant, in all its primal rage and fury, proceeded to pummel the halfling, striking, tearing, and mashing the now pile of viscera until it was sufficiently pulverized. The giant stood for a moment, blood-soaked and breathing heavily. His eyes scanned the room for any other immediate threats. If I wait too long, he would inevitably see me. But if I use the ring, he will definitely sense me. I weighed my options heavily, before slipping the ring of invisibility back onto my finger and running for the exit. I was able to dash a few good feet before the ground shook once more. Soon enough, I felt the life squeezed from my body as the giant's clawed flipper gripped my torso. Still invisible, I was lifted 20 feet into the air and brought to its face. Its eyes, bulging and bloodshot, shuddered frequently, looking for the source of this unknown magic. I removed the ring, and using what little air remained in my lungs, I let out a raspy, quivering whistle. The giant's eyes focused onto me with an intense, investigative glare. His grip on my body loosened, and I took a sharp, burning breath of the Arctic air. He lowered me to the ground, where I then collapsed to my hands and knees. Avoiding eye contact, I extended my arms outward towards the giant, holding the ring in my palms. I felt one of its claws scoop the ring from my finger, and I glanced up to watch him waddle back to his workbench. Eager to examine the ring, he reached once more for his whale bristle brush and a new length of riding hide. Before returning to his studies, the giant turned to face me once more. We maintained eye contact for a long moment when the giant finally broke the silence with some words, softly mumbled in common. Please leave. I hastily obliged, scraping together my belongings and departing. I made the trek through the tundra and back to the caravans, gathering my supplies and beginning the slow and arduous journey back to warmer climates.